necessarily so. It ain't necessarily so. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a new episode of Chatting with Lady C. Hello, Mum, how are you?
I'm well, thank you, honey. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, good, good.
Did you have a good weekend?
Oh, very busy, very busy.
Yes, of course, yes.
Oh, but I'm here and I'm well.
Yes.
And you?
Yeah, I'm great. It was a nice, busy weekend too, so... Yeah, it's great, it's great.
It's good.
Just looking forward for the future plans that we have for this week, and get that all done.
So
let's start off. So for our first question today is from Bernadette BMS. Dear Lady C, I adore your videos. They are great, insightful and colourful. A joy to my ears. Question for you. Can you provide some thoughts as to why Princess Eugenie moved out of Frogmore Cottage after 6 weeks? She is pregnant. Is it not ideal for a woman making house moves? Do you think Harry wants out of the marriage, or Meghan is such a control freak that drove Eugenie and her husband to flee? Your thoughts, please. But wouldn't House share with Eugenie and Jack if they return to Britain next year? Source close to Harry and Meghan said.
well, that's a very interesting question. I would remind everybody that a few weeks ago I made the point that I had information that I was not at that point able to impart, but sort of watch this space where Meghan and Harry and Eugenie and Jack were concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put it this way.
Mm-hmm.
The press have said
Mm-hmm.
that Jack and Eugenie were living in Frogmore Cottage, that it was given to them by Harry and Meghan.
Mm-hmm.
My information is that they have never lived at Frogmore Cottage,
Mm-hmm.
that they have never had any intention of living at Frogmore Cottage, that the whole thing was a fabrication. Now, who it was fabricated by is what is interesting. There are many ways of looking at this, and I want to be careful because I don't want to step on anybody's toes needlessly,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be fair to everybody, and I don't want to get anybody into trouble, and I don't want to create trouble between cousins. But if I were allowed the occasional use of my cousin's cottage,
Mm-hmm.
I would not be exactly overjoyed to pick up a newspaper and read that they, in their magnanimous multiplicity of splendiferousness, had given me the cottage.
Mm.
Nor would I be exactly thrilled if sources close to the cousins were saying that, well, we might all share it together. So I suppose really what I'm trying to say is that I have never been convinced that Eugenie and Jack had moved into Frogmore Cottage at all, because my information was that they had not moved into it. But I couldn't say it for various reasons, which I will not be going into, because I need to protect people who, you know, sometimes say things.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be very surprised if Eugenie and Jack are going to end up sharing Frogmore Cottage with Harry and Meghan, should they return. I mean, there's certainly there are reasons why it would be very convenient for Eugenie to be very near to her parents, who live at Royal Lodge, which is just down the road from Frogmore Cottage. But, it seems as if the PR machine has been active yet again. We need to be in the papers, we need to be the centre of attention, we need to be in the headlines, we need to let everybody know how wonderful we are, and, look at how wonderful we are, and our PR are leaking all sorts of stuff, some of which might be true, much of which isn't. What do you think?
I think they're trying to flee. Would you want to be around people that seek attention but is not getting the right attention every day and have to be hearing what's going on maybe and all the havoc dealing with that, living in the same household? You wouldn't want to be around all that.
I certainly wouldn't want to be. Absolutely.
Me too. No, that's probably why.
So, yeah, I think you might have hit a nail very near to the head, if not on the head.
Because if she's got her PR team in every day maybe, and then always on calls and always business meetings or meetings with other people, it's going to be a busy household all the time. And would you want to be around that?
If they are here at all, but they're not here.
True.
They're not here, and but and the Sussexes have announced that next year the public is going to see much more of them than they have seen this year, and God knows we've seen enough of them.
Yes.
So. Next question, honey.
Nice. So for our next question today is from Lovey Moon. Lady C, hopefully you will see this question. Can you say 3 nice things about Meghan?
Yes. Well, I can come up with far more than 3 nice things to say about Meghan. Because, she has many gifts from nature. And she has many things to commend her, as I have been at great pains in my book to point out. So I will say 3 nice things about her. She's good looking, she has a good figure, and she's energetic. Meghan's problems are not her gifts, they're her character. They're what she does with her gifts. And that is where the rub lies. But she has many gifts. And I, for one, especially when I was writing the book, was very hopeful that she would learn from the errors and rectify her ways. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. So far, I don't see much evidence that either she or Harry would be keen to return her or having mended their ways. I think they're on a new path, and let's see how it works out. I mean, I know an awful lot of people think they're doomed to failure, and a lot of people think they are assured of success. I fall somewhere between those 2 stools. I can see where, if they continue at the rate they're going, they are definitely not going to be outstanding successes. But I can also see if they learn from their mistakes and cut their cloth according to the pattern that is required of royalty. Because all they have to offer is their royalty, nothing else. Anything else is just icing on the cake. And then they might succeed. They might succeed. I'm not so sure that they will succeed, but they might succeed. And if they succeed, I would say good luck to them. I certainly wish neither of them ill. And it would be very nice if they turned things around. I'm not so sure that's going to happen, however. What do you think?
I'm not sure what's going to happen.
No.
Because I think they're in a good position of having a stable life. And like you say, if people might think they're going to drop down, and some people think they're going to go high, like you say, if they stay in the middle, they'll be fine.
Yes,
But
well,
they might be doing the wrong thing.
the problem
staying in
is
the middle.
Icarus wanted to fly very close to the sun.
Mm.
So
Yeah, if they just stay in the middle, they should realise if they just stay there, they would have a nice life.
what I find perplexing is since they're not really leading royal ways of life,
No.
and they're not going to really be royalty in parentheses. What do they have that recommends them to the general populace? I mean, they're not experts on anything. They do try to set themselves up as experts on various things, but they're not experts on anything. And it will be interesting to see how they spin it. At the moment, I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors and a very great deal of hot air.
Yes.
And
like you say, just attention seeking, trying to get on the newspaper all the time.
And they say next year they're going to be doing far more. Well, if they're not leading royal lives, who are they that they should be Lord and Lady Bountiful, endowing everybody with their presence?
And what do they mean by doing a lot far more?
Well, and it's going to be authentically them. It's not going to be what they've been doing so far. They're going to be doing, hopefully next year, what they intended to do this year. Well, let's see. I mean, let's give them the chance. I mean, I think one should always give people a chance. But I also think that to an awful lot of people, this is a train wreck in the making, and they are transfixed as the train hurtles down the track. And let's see if it's going to hit the buffers or not. But certainly, I can think of a lot more than 3 nice things to say about her. As I said, as far as I can see, it's not nature's gifts that are the problem, nor indeed is it the enhancement of nature's gifts. It is what she then does thereafter that is a big problem. She just doesn't ring true. Next question, honey.
No worries. For our next question today is from Lynn Halden. Hello, what do you think of Peter Morgan, the creator of The Crown, calling the royal family a mutating virus, and saying the Queen is a woman of limited intelligence? How can Harry condone such statements about his family?
Well, that's 2 questions, so I'll answer the last first very easily. When you're on the big bucks that they are on, it is amazing what you can do. It's just amazing the incentive you have to look the other way.
Just to get money.
Give me the money and
I'll spill the beans.
or I'll allow people to trash my family, and I'll just think, oh well, this has nothing to do with me. It's not a very noble way of behaving, but they want to make money, and this is their way of making money. They also want to turn themselves into global figures to rival the British Crown. They want to be the American version of the Crown. That's what they want to be. And they're setting themselves up, and they're cooperating with Netflix to set them up to be these mega superstar magnitudinous celebrities that are transcend royalty. But of course, it's basically all because they are royal. And remember, Netflix is about the Crown. Peter Morgan, I think, has one heck of a nerve to call the royal family a mutating virus. It shows a level of antipathy, irrational hatred, really, that is very unprofessional. If this is a man who is supposed to be making movies and making a great deal of money off this family, you would imagine that he would have enough respect for the fact that he considers their story sufficiently interesting to impart it to thousands of cinema goers, because he's done cinemas before, and now this Netflix series, and he calls them a mutating virus. I mean, don't you think that's just awful?
Totally, definitely.
It's just, I mean, beyond belief, really. I mean, nasty. It's just nasty. It also shows that really anything he does where they're concerned should be treated with great skepticism, because he is unbalanced. He is so negative about them that he is unhinged.
Yes, definitely, because how can they be a mutating virus when they, over the many years now, they've been losing more and more power? Like, it's more of a government, the rules, and they've got their little says, but they don't know. If what he's doing right now, he'd probably have his head on a stick in the Tower of London, being this mean to them.
Well, some years back.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
And then, but was there also something else that I was supposed to have answered?
What you thought about him, and then calling him a mutating virus, and a woman of limited intelligence.
Oh, yes. Peter Morgan is obviously of sufficient intelligence to have made himself a career and a great deal of money out of an institution and its occupants for whom he has nothing but contempt. So he obviously has sufficient intelligence and creativity and opportunism to have spotted an opening and taken it. And from that point of view, yes, he has intelligence. The Queen is of limited intelligence. Well, the Queen is the most successful head of state in the world at the moment. She has been the most revered head of state for the last 20 or 30 years. Her popularity has waxed and waned, but she has never really been disrespected ever. Even when people didn't like having a queen, they will have conceded that she is actually a very good head of state and takes her role very seriously and does an exemplary job. She doesn't need to have more intelligence than to have made a howling success over 70 years of one of the most difficult positions on earth. Maybe she shouldn't have more intelligence than she does. But for him to say she's of limited intelligence would lead you to suppose that he actually knows exactly how much intelligence she has. Well, I would point out to Mr. Morgan that one of the benchmarks and yardsticks for measuring intelligence is successful performance. The Queen does not have to have been academically bright. She didn't have to have gone to grammar school, the way Mr. Morgan and Mr. Lacey are so thrilled about grammar schools, you know, this sort of inverted snobbery that a certain type of person in this country suffers from. No, she, by her own account, will tell you she wasn't very well educated. But the mere fact that she's made such a howling success of her role will also tell you that she has great native intelligence, doesn't it? And she's certainly, according to everybody who knows her well, very witty, very quick on the uptake. I mean, I can tell you from my own experience of her that she's really quick on the uptake. And that's a sign of intelligence. You can't be stupid and quick on the uptake because one of the other words for stupid is slow. Well, you can't be really as fast as she is and slow at the same time. It doesn't make sense. I don't think he's done himself or his reputation any service by being so contemptuous and really vitriolic about the royal family and the Queen. What do you think?
I think it's just being nasty, and he's probably jealous of something to be so mean.
Well, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. He most likely is jealous because he'd like to be number one and he's not number one. Oh, and by the way, somebody asked the question, was Peter Morgan English? Yes, he is English. He was born in Wimbledon, and he is English. He is a middle-class English boy who's done very well for himself and is clearly bright enough and gifted enough and talented enough to have made a huge success career-wise of his movie making and his creativity and his conceptualizing and his writing. He's done very well. He is English. Next question, honey.
So for our next question is from Noreen Colbert. I am wondering what you think of the companion guide to the series written by Robert Lacey. Is he or was the historical consultant to the Crown? He also writes the facts of what was happening, he says. I enjoy them, and I have them for the first 3 seasons, but I do not know how reliable he is as a British monarchist historian. There was a huge market for his companion guides for the beginning of the series.
Well, I am afraid I know nothing about the companion guides. I've never seen them. I didn't know they existed until I heard the question. So to that extent, I cannot comment. What I can say is that I have been very disappointed in Robert because I read his book about the Brothers at War, or whatever it's called. You know, the book about William and Harry.
Yes.
I can't remember what it's called
I was
now.
thinking of a movie there for a second.
I think it's called Brothers at War. And I picked up on a great many howlers. And I also picked up on an inverted snobbery. I mean, a little bit earlier I said about Robert being a grammar school boy and so proud of it, which I'm not saying you shouldn't be proud of it if you are, but it is not a badge of superiority to rip off and use the pin to poke everybody in the eye. And he makes the point in Blood Brothers that he is clever enough to have been a grammar school boy, but he doesn't have the eccentricity of genius. So in other words, if you're middling intelligent, that's great. But if you're super intelligent, that's a big no-no. And he, in that book, was as unprofessional and as vitriolic and as snide and cowardly, because it's all covert, where various people and things were concerned, including me. He says, first of all, he says that I lived in Belgravia because we both lived in Belgravia and used to run into each other. And he knows I lived in Belgravia, but he couldn't be bothered to find out for the length of time that I lived in Belgravia, so he gets that wrong. Well, that's a minor thing. Then he tries to disparage the fact that I lived in the Cundy Street flats, which he could never have got access to because he didn't have the connections to gain access to it. Otherwise, I'm sure he'd have been right up that pole like a rat up a drain pipe. And he was that I lived in bedsit land for the well-connected. Well, I don't know if the Americans know what a bedsitter is. A bedsitter is a studio apartment. It's a one-room apartment, often without a kitchen or a lavatory. Or if it has a kitchen and a lavatory, they might even be in the same room. So it is, he's basically saying that I lived in a one-room slum for the well-connected. Not one of the Cundy Street flats is a studio apartment. Every single one of them was either a 1, 2, or 3-bedroom apartment. The 2-bedroom apartments and the 3-bedroom apartments were actually the same floor space. So I was delighted that I didn't have a 3-bedroom apartment, because a 2-bedroom apartment gave you much more space per room. They were occupied by the great and the good of this nation. They were the grace and favour apartments of the Duke of Westminster. You couldn't gain access to the Cundy Street flats except through the Grosvenor estate or the Duke of Westminster. Lord Hume of the Hersal, the previous Prime Minister, lived there. George Younger, one of the Secretaries of State, lived there. Richard Luce, who became Master of the Royal Household, he lived there. The Marchioness of Milford Haven, who's the widow of the previous head of the Mountbatten family and the mother of the present head of the Mountbatten family, she lived there. It had the highest concentration of aristocrats in this country. It was grace and favour, yes, which meant that we paid less rent than if it had been an open market situation. But that was the way for the Duke of Westminster to keep control over who he had living there. It was covenanted as for his friends and relations. And this sleazy little man is having the temerity to make out that I lived in a slum and that everybody, but he does say it was for the well-connected. That's because he couldn't get away with not saying it was for the well-connected. He also concedes that I was the person who did a host of firsts with Diana, then is not only unprofessional enough, but dishonest enough. And I use the word dishonest deliberately, because he had to have been dishonest when he did it. Then he was unprofessional enough and of a dubious merit, one could almost say integrity, to actually have the temerity to say that my book was full of fantasy, aside from the fact that I revealed that Diana had bulimia, that she had a lover, that Charles had a lover, blah, blah, blah. So after he's done all of my firsts, which of course he and all of the others have given great credit to Andrew Morton, even though Andrew Morton came after me, he then is going to plunge the knife in and has the unmitigated gall to say, but my book was full of fantasy, such as the fact that Diana thought that Barry Manakee, her private detective, had been bumped off.
Hmm.
Well, Diana is on tape. It's been broadcast by the BBC, saying she thought that Barry Manicky had been bumped off by the Secret Services. She's on tape. But all of a sudden, he is dishonest enough, manipulative enough, and unprofessional enough to actually tell a lie and put the lie in my mouth and say that it's my lie when it's his lie. I'm sorry, I think so. I have to tell you that I have always had a degree of respect for Robert Lacey because he's certainly civilized to meet. And I used to get along with him perfectly well. If I crossed paths with him, I wouldn't condescend to acknowledge his existence. He has gone down in my estimation, but I can see what he's about, and I can see what Peter Morgan is about. Robert Lacey, in his book, pushes the fact that Harry and Meghan are victims of a cruel and unfeeling and dysfunctional and ghastly royal family, and that Harry and Meghan are great freedom fighters for liberty and for justice and for truth and for all those wonderful things that grammar school boys like Robert Lacey revere, even though, of course, he can't quite stretch to even speaking the truth in his book. And so I would, off that book, because I've never read any of his other books. I tried to read his book on the Queen many years ago when it came out, and I thought it was so dull that I thought, I can't be bothered to read it. I've got it somewhere in London, I think, but I've never read it. He's not a very good writer, I don't think. Although this Brothers, what's it called? Brothers at War was perfectly readable, but he has no judgment, and he has no ability to distill. So he throws in everything, and then at the end of it all, he disagrees with himself because he doesn't have the courage or the conviction or the character to actually say what he's about. So he just throws in everything. And at the end of it all, it's a great big melee that really is a four-letter word starting with M, ending with two S's and an E in between. And on that note, I would say, if you've read and enjoyed what he wrote, the companion works, great. I'd never read them, and I, at this point, wouldn't want to read them, because I think Robert Lacey is somebody I have absolutely no respect for anymore. I mean, why lie about me in the book? There's no need to lie about me. I've never harmed him. But you see, as I say that, I see there is a need to lie about me because he's affiliated with Netflix. I have a track record of having actually revealed, I'm the person who's been the forerunner with both Diana and Meghan. And, you know, they can say what they want about me. The fact of the matter is, my being has nothing to do with it. It's my work, and it's there in black and white. And they can say anything they want and tell any lie about me, like that I made up the fact that Barry Manicky was wiped out by MI5. I never ever said that. I always said I did not think he was, but that Diana thought he was. And Diana is there on tape having said it. So no, but you see, it makes sense from their point of view, because if they rubbish me, then so they're pouring sand all over me to put out my flame, so to speak, so that will give them a clearer run and greater credibility. Well, I'm glad he thinks so. Also, of course, what I discovered from reading his book is that he's friends with Caroline Durand, who is one of the co-authors of Funding Freedom and Finding Freebies, another farce. So, I mean, really, you're dealing with people who are this, if not exactly the scum of the earth, very little above it. And on that note, I will rest my case and ask, are there any more questions?
So no, Mum, we have no more questions for today.
Okay, Sunny, good, good. So, have you enjoyed it?
It was fun, yes.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
I did get a little bit hot under the collar, but I think it's so uncalled for to be nasty and lying about people.
Also, I thought the situation about the apartment was a bit mean. Like, even if you had a studio, and I would be happy to be in central London right now and own a studio. Like you said, a studio is a bedroom, living room, kitchen, bathroom, all in one room. A studio is that.
Yeah.
And that would be amazing for young people to start off with. I mean, that's just mean. Like even if you just had a bedroom in a shared house, you're making your way by yourself, and that's fantastic. It's just a bit mean to.
It is nasty. It is nasty, and he is nasty, and he's unprofessional. And I caught him out in so many inaccuracies, misinformations, fabrications, nonsenses, and I would have actually addressed it if the book had done better. But since it sank like a stone, so I thought I'm not going to bother, because I thought it's one or two people asked, as you know, if I'd address it. But it was only one or two people, because the truth is, the book achieved the success it deserved, which was none. And on that note, I must say thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and I hope you have enjoyed this, and keep the questions coming in, and that's it.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody, and we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you very much, and goodbye.